Hey Essentials Mamas, here is our week 14 overview. We're still working in the SVT IODO. The main new thing this week is going to be the part of speech, verb voice, talking active and passive verbs on page 174. If you see here, it talks about active voice, and we have Kelly fell down the hill, the mother loved her child, the tornado ravaged the town, and some other examples. All of these are active voice. The subject is performing the action. With passive voice, the subject receives the action of the verb. And so we have the first sentence example: the tornado ravaged the town. And ravage transfers the action from the subject, tornado, to the direct object, town. And in your second sentence, the town was ravaged by the tornado. The verb is still transitive, even though this is a passive sentence, because it is transferring the action. And I found some extra information about this because last year it seemed a little confusing to me. Ravaged is labeled as a transitive verb, even though it does not have a direct object in the sentence. But the verb is still transitive because the action is still being transferred. Something new to me, and it was kind of interesting. It says that the 7 sentence patterns that we use in Essentials don't apply to passive sentences. Passive sentences have their own set of rules for parsing and diagramming, and it is not covered in Essentials. But they do want the students to recognize when a verb is passive versus active, and it's good to know how to change it from passive to active and from active to passive, and that's why it's included in this unit. And there's some more examples over here of active and passive sentences, but a passive verb is a transitive verb. In the sentence, I kicked the ball, the subject I is doing the action kicked, and the action is transferred to the ball. If we make that sentence passive, the ball was kicked by me, you still have the action of kicking, and it's being transferred to the ball. So even though there's not a direct object in a passive sentence, the verb is still transitive. So going along with our active and passive voice, we have chart CC, which here's a small copy of it here, and then it's also in your chart section. This is not a chart to be memorized, just to be attended to kind of look at it and look at the words and the different, for the verb anatomy, to love, passive voice. And you have your singular and plural, and the simple, perfect, progressive, and perfect progressive. Next, we are still working on SVT IODO sentences. And one thing I wanted to look at up here is, all right, these example sentences. The first ones, I kicked her the ball, is declarative. She baked me a cake. Those are both declarative sentences. Make sure when your students are labeling, especially your first years, that they don't label the very first noun they come to as the direct object, because then that would be I kicked her, and that totally changes the meaning of the sentence. So I kicked who or what, and as you ask the questions, I kicked the ball to who or what, to her. And the same with she baked me a cake. If she baked me, and me is marked as the direct object, that totally changes the sentence. Our purpose this week is imperative purpose. And And so we've got our example sentence, Cannon kicked me the ball, which is declarative. And if we changed it to an imperative purpose, which remember, imperative is a command, kick me the ball. And in the imperative sentence, just like we learned in the first semester, the subject of an imperative sentence is the implied you. And it goes in parentheses in the subject line when you diagram the sentence. Let's see. Let's look back down here. And we have your example sentence here. In your book on page 176 goes through a complex subject, complex sentence, SVT, IODO. And this week at home, we are just working on your charts and the verb anatomy chart CC, mainly for the second and third year students. First years, continue working on your basic charts, whichever ones you need the most help with, A or C or D, E, any of those. If you're doing the spelling and editing, you're going to continue with that and try to diagram one sentence a day. First year students will diagram sentences 1 through 3 and do analytical tasks 1 through 4. Second and third year students can go ahead and start doing tasks 5 and 6 if you have not been already. And we will go over the quid et quo and all of this next week, hopefully in class.